There is a specific kind of silence that follows a public execution. Not the chaotic, screaming kind, but the polished, cultivated hush that settles over a manicured garden where guests glide in silk and sip $1,000 champagne as if nothing irreversible has just occurred. I was standing at the edge of the sprawling Charleston estate, the thick salt-tinged humidity pressing against my skin like a second dress. When Kimberly approached, she did not resemble a villain. She resembled royalty, a matriarch in a champagne-colored gown, holding a glass of rosé the way a monarch holds a scepter. Behind her stood three of the principal investors in the $1.8 billion merger my stepbrother Justin was supposedly masterminding. Justin was there as well, adjusting his $50,000 watch and laughing a little too loudly at something one of the bankers had said. He didn't look at me. He rarely did unless he required something repaired, moved, or salvaged. "Alexandra, dear," Kimberly said, her voice slicing neatly through the soft swell of the string quartet. She opened her clutch and withdrew a rusted iron wrench, heavy and worn. She extended it toward me with two fingers, as though it carried infection. "The catering truck's compressor is making that dreadful humming sound again. It's warming the champagne, and we simply cannot allow that before the toast." My eyes moved from the wrench to her face. "I didn't blink. I'm sure you won't mind," she continued, her smile flawless and hollow. "After all, you're the only one here who's actually good with her hands. Justin was just explaining to the partners how you're our family's little grease monkey. It's endearing, truly, such a practical pastime for a girl." Justin gave a sharp, dismissive laugh. "It's accurate. Give her an engine and she lights up. She's just the mechanic, gentlemen. Don't let the grease stains alarm you." The investors responded with polite smiles laced with condescension. I felt no blush rise to my cheeks. No tears threatened my eyes. What I felt was colder than embarrassment. I felt the steady weight of the internal audit I had been conducting in my head for the past 3 hours. I reached forward and took the wrench. The iron was cool and substantial in my palm, solid, honest, a tangible symbol of the distance between their curated illusions and my unvarnished reality. "I'll handle it," I said evenly. My voice carried the smooth chill of marble. I turned and walked away. I did not move toward the catering truck. I walked toward the vendor table at the rear of the lawn where my laptop waited. The silence I left behind had gravity, but the silence I was about to introduce would be seismic. Have you ever been mistaken for the hired help inside your own family? Leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I'd like to know who's here with us today. I crossed the lawn, away from the chiming crystal glasses and carefully rehearsed laughter. At the perimeter, behind a decorative hedge, sat a narrow folding table, slightly unsteady, reserved for vendors and staff. It was where the people who orchestrated the magic paused to breathe. I took a seat, removed my laptop from my bag, and opened it. The screen's glow was the only honest light in that garden. As the system booted, I examined my hands, clean, no visible grease. But the calluses remained permanent evidence. Kimberly and Justin adored the grease monkey label because it reduced me. It made me manageable, categorized, lesser. They saw trade school as a failure of aspiration. What they failed to see was this. While Justin floundered through his first year of business school and Robert nearly drowned during the 2018 mortgage collapse, I was the one stabilizing the ground beneath them. I was the quiet capital behind this family's continued existence. For 3 years, I worked double shifts as a field technician to clear Robert's back taxes so this very estate wouldn't be seized. I paid for Justin's private tutors when his MBA teetered on collapse. I invested tens of thousands of dollars into a family subscription service that never once issued a receipt of gratitude. My compassion had functioned like a high-interest loan. They had defaulted repeatedly. I didn't reach for tissues. I reached for my security token. Most people underestimate the strategic value of invisibility. When others decide you are insignificant, they stop performing around you. They leave financial statements open on desks. They discuss offshore transfers while you're repairing their Wi-Fi. They treat you like background furniture, forgetting that furniture absorbs sound. That is the advantage of the overlooked. I grew up deciphering the silence between my father's half-truths and Kimberly's ambition. I became a forensic accountant not despite my family, but because of them. I learned to uncover what was buried because everything in my childhood home was concealed. The file surfaced on my screen. Project Golden Oak, the $1.8 billion acquisition. Justin believed he had engineered brilliance. He believed he had concealed shell company connections beneath layers of digital misdirection, but I understood his patterns better than he did. I knew where he would hide the evidence because I had spent years cleaning up his debris. When I marked the first discrepancy, I felt no surge of anger. Emotion contaminates analysis. I removed it from the equation. This was a ledger of accumulated damage, and for the first time in 32 years, I was holding the red pen. I pressed the Initiate Forensic Hold command. Inside my laptop, a different sunrise emerged, one made of documentation, timestamps, and quiet consequence. The merger was no longer advancing. It was suspended beneath my scalpel. 20 minutes later, the shadow of silk crossed my screen. I didn't look up. The fragrance of jasmine and superiority announced her presence. Still playing with your little gadgets, Alexandra? Kimberly's voice was velvet wrapped around steel. I checked the truck. The compressor is still humming. You've ignored a direct instruction from the hostess. My eyes remained fixed on the data. The compressor isn't the issue, I replied calmly. The foundation is. I'd worry less about chilled champagne and more about the structural integrity of tonight. She laughed, short and brittle. Justin joined her, leaning casually against the hedge. You always did enjoy theatrics, he said, his tone dipped in patronizing sympathy. I told the board you were a family success story. Shows we uplift less fortunate relatives, it's good optics. But if you're going to sulk publicly, you're undermining my narrative. I don't need to undermine your narrative, Justin, I said, closing the laptop and meeting his gaze. You've managed that independently. Kimberly's expression hardened. Careful, Alexandra. Your father keeps you in the will out of respect for your late mother. One comment from me about your instability tonight, and that courtesy disappears. You'll be exactly what you appear to be, an outsider who overstayed her invitation. She leaned closer, breath tinted with vintage wine. You may know spreadsheets, she whispered, but power isn't about numbers, it's about controlling belief, and no one believes the girl with grease beneath her nails. Justin checked his watch. The investors are waiting. Mom, let's allow the help to finish her task. They walked back toward the lights, laughter trailing behind them like smoke. They weren't merely excluding me. They were attempting to overwrite me. They assumed they were belittling a mechanic. They did not realize they were provoking the person who had already removed the safety pin from their billion-dollar device. 3 days later, Charleston's salt-heavy air was replaced by the filtered sterility of a 44th-floor boardroom in Charlotte. The mechanic was gone. I stood before floor-to-ceiling glass, city skyline stretching below. I wore a tailored charcoal power suit. My hair was secured in a precise, unforgiving knot. On the mahogany table rested a single object, the rusted iron wrench Kimberly had handed me. It now served as a paperweight atop a stack of federal injunctions. The double doors opened. Justin entered first, followed by Kimberly and Robert. They halted when they saw me seated at the head of the table. Alex, what is this? Justin snapped, dropping his briefcase. I just got notified the merger has been flagged. Why are you in my consultant's chair? I did not stand. I did not lift my eyes from my tablet. It's not your consultant's chair, I said evenly. It's the lead auditor's seat, and you're 45 seconds late to your compliance hearing. Kimberly let out a shrill laugh. This is absurd. Robert, tell your daughter to end this performance. She couldn't even clear security. I authorized the badges, I replied, cutting through her protest. I gestured toward the 2 men in dark suits near the door. Senior agents from the government's forensic division. I've been appointed primary lead on this acquisition. Color drained from Robert's face. Alex, he said weakly, you're a mechanic. I own that firm, Dad, I answered. It was a front for private forensic operations. I spent 10 years becoming the person institutions hire when they need hidden money exposed. This is the fragility of counterfeit power. People like Kimberly and Justin confuse proximity to wealth with the competence to sustain it. They believe attire and office space equal authority. But power without substance is just an illusion waiting for an audit illusion. When a real authority enters the room, the illusion doesn't just fade, it shatters. Justin, let's start with the $2 million consulting fee move to a Cayman account last Tuesday. I leaned back, watching as the realization hit them. They weren't looking at a grease monkey anymore. They were looking at the person who held the power to delete their entire future with a single keystroke. The atmosphere in the boardroom didn't just turn cold, it became vacuum-sealed. Justin was still blustering, trying to use his height to intimidate me. This is a reach, Alex, Justin sneered. A $2 million transfer is a rounding error. It was a retainer. It's perfectly legal. I agree, I said, my voice as flat as a heart monitor's flatline. Retainers are legal. Forgery, however, is not. I tapped a command on my tablet. Two documents appeared side by side on the projector. On the left was the signature page for the loan that started Justin's company. On the right was a digitized copy of my mother's last will. Robert, look at the screen. I said the seed money for Justin's company didn't come from a silent investor. Dad, it came from Mom's life insurance policy, the policy that was supposed to be held in trust for my education. Kimberly, you told me the policy had lapsed. You told me Mom left us with nothing but debt. I zoomed in on the signatures. The analysts have already flagged this. The signature on the loan document, the one supposedly signed by my mother 3 months before she died, is a perfect digital trace of her signature from years prior. Someone forged a dying woman's name to steal her daughter's inheritance. Kimberly's face didn't just go pale, it turned a sickly translucent gray. That is an outrageous accusation, she stammered. It's not an accusation, Kimberly. It's a forensic fact. You didn't just belittle me for 10 years. You robbed me to fund a lifestyle you didn't earn. You took the only thing my mother had left to give me and used it to buy Justin's first office lease. Robert looked at Kimberly, then back at the screen. He looked truly small. This $1,080,000,000 merger is built on the foundation of a felony. I said, this isn't just a family squabble anymore. It's bank fraud. I looked at Justin. He looked like a ghost in a $1,000 suit. This wasn't revenge. I whispered loud enough for only them to hear. It was just accounting, and after 7 years of interest, the bill is finally due. The silence that followed was absolute. Kimberly lunged across the table, her manicured nails digging into the mahogany. Alexandra, please, she sobbed. We're a family. We can fix this. If this merger dies, we lose the estate. You can't want your own brother to go to prison over a technicality. It's not a technicality, Kimberly. It's the law, I said. I didn't move an inch. And as for family, you forfeited that word the second you forged my mother's name. You handed me a wrench to fix your catering truck while you were living off my stolen inheritance. Justin suddenly stood up, his face contorted. You think you're so high and mighty. You're a spiteful, bitter woman, Alex. You always have been. I looked at him, and for the first time I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. I'm not destroying the deal, Justin. You destroyed it the moment you built it on fraud. I'm just the one documenting the wreckage, and don't mistake my clarity for spite. Spite is emotional. I am being purely professional. I turned back to the agents. Secure the server logs. I want a full freeze on all assets, effective immediately. This merger is dead. Alex, wait. Robert called out, his voice cracking. What happens to us? I stood up and smoothed my jacket. I picked up the rusted wrench from the table and held it out to Kimberly. She stared at it, trembling. You told me at the wedding that I was the only one good for fixing things, I said, but some things are too broken to fix. Not even the grease monkey can save you this time. I dropped the wrench. It hit the polished mahogany with a heavy final thud. I'm not the mechanic anymore, Kimberly. I'm the one who disassembles the engine of your lies. I walked out of the boardroom without looking back. My heels clicked against the marble floor in a perfect, steady rhythm. The fallout was total. Within 48 hours, the merger was terminated. Robert issued a statement about restructuring, which was code for selling the estate to cover the legal fees. I wasn't there to see it. I was in my new apartment in the city, a space filled with sunlight and the kind of quiet you can only hear when you stop waiting for an attack. No more floral bedspreads from a childhood I was forced to outgrow. I sat at my kitchen island drinking coffee. I opened my personal laptop and saw an email from Robert. He didn't ask how I was. He asked if I could talk to the auditors to help Justin avoid jail. He called it a family favor. I didn't feel a surge of anger. I didn't feel the need to reply with a list of grievances. I simply clicked the checkbox next to his name, hit delete, and then emptied the trash folder. That was the final audit. The balance sheet of my life was finally perfectly in the black. I want to speak directly to you, the one listening, who knows exactly what it feels like to be Alexandra. Maybe you're the one who was left out of the family group chat, or the one whose success is treated like an accident by the people who should be your biggest fans. We often seek apologies from the people who hurt us, but an apology only carries weight when the person offering it realizes they have lost the power to hurt us anymore. You don't need their sorry to be whole, you need your own competence. If they won't give you a seat at their table, it's because you were meant to own the building. Don't waste your breath trying to convince them of your value. Spend your energy building a life so undeniably excellent that their opinion becomes a footnote in a story they no longer have the right to read. The most powerful form of closure isn't a loud argument. It's the silence of a morning where you no longer care what they think. Sometimes the greatest gift people can give you is their rejection. It forces you to stop trying to fit into their small boxes and start building a fortress of your own. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a loud explosion. It's the quiet, undeniable truth of who you've become. If this story resonated with you, share your journey in the comments. Subscribe for more stories of quiet power and professional sovereignty. Remember, you aren't just the mechanic of your life.